He taunted Governor Claiborne in real life. The governor of Louisiana put a $500 price on his head and said, anyone who brings in Jean Lafitte, and then so Jean Lafitte put in posters that said $5,000 for the governor to be given to me. That just, he as a tit for tat with the.
Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth-Brown, host of History Bards and Down Under interviews in association with Meet the Author in the US. And I am here with a very interesting author with a wonderful background. His name is Owen Pataki, and he has written a marvelous book. Tell us about it, Owen.
So this book is called Smoke in the Cypress. It's a historical fiction novel. It's set in New Orleans in the latter month of 1814 and the first few weeks of 1815. It's the third book in a series. This is kind of a spin-off.
Amidst the swamps of Louisiana, a soldier's redemption collides with a city's fate. In the waning days of the War of 1812, Marcel Moreau, a wounded veteran of Napoleon's Grand Army, arrives in New Orleans, a city on the brink of invasion. Tasked with finding Celeste de Beaumais, a young aristocrat who has abandoned her privileged world for the sprawling plantations of Louisiana, Moreau is drawn into a tangled web of danger, betrayal, and revolution. With an English fleet looming, the city's desperate defenders, Creole farmers, American militias, and the notorious pirates of Jean Lafitte turn to Moreau's battlefield expertise. But as he prepares them for war, another battle brews in the shadows. A ruthless plantation master seeks to reclaim those who have escaped his tyranny, and Moreau must decide where his true allegiance lies. With peril in the swamps, treachery in the streets, and war at the city's doorstep, Moreau's journey will test his courage, his loyalty, and the cost of freedom itself.
Okay. Now, you have a degree in history, and this show is aired all through the world. And there'll be quite a few people that don't know much about the War of 1812. Can you just give us a little bit of a background?
Yeah, so the story takes place towards the end of the War of 1812, and it's a really interesting and compelling time because earlier that year, the British fleet, the British army, fresh off of defeating Napoleon in Europe, in Spain, in southern France, they sent some of their best troops who had some very real experience against Napoleon and the French army to America. And in that year, they seized Washington, D.C., they besieged Baltimore, they actually burned down the White House. They occupied the White House minutes, according to urban legend, after the president and his family had left. And the urban legend is that there was still hot food on the table from the president's family fleeing when the British army got there. So that was 1814. Obviously, the war started in 1812 over several issues. The impressment of American sailors into the British Navy was kind of the nominal cause of the war itself. It kind of made sense to have this character come to the New World. He's definitely his own person. I definitely do not see myself when I'm writing him, but I will say that in all three of the books, there's a military element to all three. And again, without any direct one-to-one references or comparisons, I will say that there are certain personality traits, there's certain, comments, there's certain demeanors. There's certain conversations, or certain idioms, or just little quirks of personality that do go into the characters from people I did know. How people deal with fatigue or stress, or kind of jokes they make, or how they handle interactions with superior officers or subordinate soldiers, or the prospect of danger or combat or whatever. So there are some elements of realism that come in, but there's no direct basis of this character is me or anyone else specifically. It's all kind of just take what you've lived and what you've heard and experienced, and try to slip that into the characters when it's appropriate.
The rugged world of Plymouth, 1620, where Sarah, a courageous woman, embarks on an unforgiving journey in the New World. Amidst the treacherous unknown, she faces starvation, death, and the harsh realities of early colonial life. On the wings of the red-tailed hawk, masterfully weaves historical authenticity with an inspiring tale of resilience, as Sarah discovers her inner strength to survive against overwhelming odds. This award-winning novel, lauded for its evocative writing and powerful portrayal of women's triumphs in history, is a must-read for lovers of gripping historical fiction. Join Sarah on her harrowing yet empowering journey and witness the indomitable spirit that defines the true pioneers of America.
Has a bit of a love interest, doesn't he? Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I would say I think he's got two love interests. One that doesn't work out for him, and then one that sort of is a bit of a happy ending. But I will say that it was interesting, that wasn't really planned. Specifically when I was doing the outlines and brainstorming for the book, I wouldn't say that it was. I had that arced out completely. Either one of the kind of romantic elements. I think it did kind of unfold naturally and kind of reveal itself. And for the character that he doesn't end up with, that the romance doesn't ever kind of take off, I like the dynamic, because there's a little bit of a kind of secret rivalry that emerges there. There's a bit of boy likes girl. He thinks maybe she reciprocates. It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't work out.
Who's going to read it?
I hope everyone watching this video right now, I hope anyone who likes historical fiction, I hope people who are interested in French history, that kind of makes its way to this story. I think this is interesting, an interesting novel for me, because the first two were set in Paris, in France, in Europe. And this one is set in America. This is set in New Orleans. Everyone in America, whether they've been to New Orleans or not, they know what New Orleans is about. They know it's a fun, wild, interesting, unique, diverse city. So I really hope that kind of sells it to an American audience in a way that the first two kind of haven't found yet. But that being said, I know you're Australian, you're in Australia. A lot of your viewers are Australian. I hope people from around the world can find something they connect with. Slavery is a big part of this story. It's a big part of the setting. That time period in Louisiana, outside of New Orleans, on the plantation, slavery was an extremely widespread. I mean, it was the economic lifeblood of Louisiana, of much of America at that time. So there are multiple scenes where there is cruelty on display from the foremen, from the slave drivers, from the plantation owners, from the flashbacks to the real event of the German Coast Uprising, which was an incredibly brutal real life event of the enslaved men from one plantation. They attacked the plantation owner, the master, in the middle of the night, killed his son, moved on to the next plantation. Their numbers grew, and they had this long, multiple day revolt that was brutally crushed. And again, I won't go into too many details of that, but it was a very sad and brutal ending to that uprising.
Yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it? But I suppose you really do have to be truthful,
Yeah.
and you have to, I suppose, slavery being an integral part of that era. It's, I suppose you sort of have to bring it into the story somehow.
Yeah, yeah, and I also think, you know, if if you don't show some elements of the truth of it, if you don't kind of shine a light, hold a mirror up, and say this is what happened, you're kind of doing an injustice or a disservice to to what really happened by not being authentic. And it can be jarring, but there's, you know, if a reader reads that and learns something and understands, takes something from that, you're not obviously meant to enjoy those, the oppression, the violence, or any of those scenes specifically. But if people come out of it with a more realistic, honest understanding of what that time period could be like for these people and what they went through, I think that is kind of necessary. If you're going to set your story in the history, you do want to get the history as accurate and as correct as possible without reveling in too much in the negative aspects of it.
As you mentioned, Smoking the Cypress, it covers, obviously freedom, loyalty, oppression, sacrifice. Those emotions, where do you get them from?
Put our character in a situation similar to that, or put their character at that setting at that time when this thing happened. And then from there, the characters and what they have to go through and how they interact with each other and what they have to do to survive and overcome. That's where the values start coming out, and the characters start revealing themselves to you. You know, the good sides and the bad sides, the times when they're courageous and heroic, the times when they're kind of cowardly or selfish, the characters who are selfish and kind of, you know, villains, they're going to challenge the protagonists and their friends, and all of a sudden the values of the characters almost speak for themselves, and it kind of takes on a life of its own. So there's a fun mix of kind of, you build the story, you shape it, you outline it, you kind of guide it, but the story via the research and as it's unfolding, it kind of reveals itself to you as you're going through it.
How did you balance sort of like historical accuracy with fiction?
Having an interest in the history and having an interest in that time period and the events that happened really helps inform the plot of the story. Like I said, you know, the British invasion of New Orleans was a really, like, you know, epic, momentous moment at that time. You know, for example, the night battle scene when Moreau is there with all the American and the Louisiana militia fighting the British. That was a real event. That really did happen. Andrew Jackson kind of took the British by surprise as they were slowly and desperately emerging out of these cypress swamps after hundreds of miles of sailing and rowing through the bayous and the swamps. They thought, you know, they were kind of safe for the night. They could set up at the Villeray plantation. The Americans had no idea. They had snuck in under their noses. Unbeknownst to them, Jackson found out about it, and the Americans came and ambushed them. That is a real event that you know was a very intense moment. So I figured having Moreau and all the main characters, at least the military characters, the militia characters, be at that event made sense, because it fits with who they are and what they've been doing and training and everything. So yeah, like you do take some liberties, and obviously most of the characters, well, I wouldn't say most, I'd say probably half the characters in this book are fictional, but at least probably half are real people.
An unforgettable mystery thriller that will transport you back to 17th century England. Introducing Dream of Courage, facing fear head on, your passport to 17th century mystery, mayhem, and murder. Follow Robert and John Rushworth through Leeds' bustling Briggate district, where danger lurks in the shadows, embodied by the thief-taker Jacob Wilding. You will laugh, you will cry, and be in awe of the twists and turns. Its meticulous attention to character development, emotional nuance, and the unfolding of the story's layers. promise a compelling and emotionally charged journey. The U.S. National Times said, "Modern writers usually don't know what it was like to live in the past, but Rushworth-Brown does this with great skill." Uncover the secrets of Smythe, the enigmatic tavern keeper who sends Robert to the Haven. To the pirate Captain Girlington. Will he outwit danger in the nick of time?
I sort of like get the feeling that the Louisiana swamps, it's almost like it's a character.
Yeah, yeah, when I first started thinking about this story, it is kind of the bayous and the cypress swamps were kind of fascinating. I knew a little bit about them, but I don't think I planned to have so much of the story set there. I didn't know "Smoke in the Cypress" would be the title, obviously, but as Moreau travels through this story, the New Orleans, the plantations, the cypress swamps, the characters in that setting, in this maroon, escaped maroon colony, these runaway slaves, that really opened up a lot of story and a lot of heart to a lot of these characters. I mean, it became this setting that really felt crucial to the story, to Moreau's character, to his story, and I really got excited and kind of interested in who these people were, how they got there, why they were there, where they're going to go, what's their story, what do they want, and so it really became, like you said, almost like a character in and of itself.
The pirates. Do you want to give some sort of idea of what part they play in the novel?
Basically, pirates who had their own little fiefdom there in the Gulf of Mexico, south of New Orleans. Jean Lafitte referred to himself as a stray sheep who wants to make his way back into the fold to the Americans. And eventually, it's historical, it's accurate that he does join the American cause. He does bring weapons, and the Baratarians end up fighting at the Battle of New Orleans. Their cannons, they brought them from their ships, their naval cannons, to Line Jackson at the Chalmette battlefield. So they end up playing a pretty crucial role in the campaign and the battle itself in real life.
Fascinating. So if you could interview one of your characters and have dinner with them, which one would it be? And what are some of the questions that you might ask them?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's tough.
I come up with a good question every once in a while.
They're all good, but that one's especially inventive. Yeah, that's a good one. After the previous question, I would say I think Jean Lafitte, just because he's a unique figure in history. He reads like he's a fictional character, something out of like a pirate novel or some like fantasy, almost like story, Pirates of the Caribbean type thing, but he was real. So I think Jean Lafitte, given how unique a character he was in real life, and how just he was like kind of like a Robin Hood character. He was a real life Robin Hood. He had his own little secret hideout in Barataria Bay. He kind of preyed on these wealthy ships to provide for the people in his little civilization, and around New Orleans. He was a folk hero. He taunted Governor Claiborne in real life. The governor of Louisiana put a $500 price on his head and said, anyone who brings in Jean Lafitte, and then so Jean Lafitte put in posters that said $5,000 for the governor to be given to me. Just he as tit for tat with the governor of Louisiana, just to taunt him.
Okay, so Smoke in the Cypress, it's made into a movie, or it's going to be made into a movie. Who would you envision playing Moreau, Celeste, and Lafitte?
Another good question. That's another tough one. I'll start with Moreau, and I think in both books, but I think the look and the dramatic talent of Timothy Chalamet. Again, he's a little young now, but I think in a few years, I think Timothy Chalamet is kind of French himself. I think he's got French relatives. He's got the dark hair. He's kind of got a little bit of the look. He's a little bit more of a pretty boy than Moreau is. Moreau, like I said, has been through a lot. He's been wounded. But I think Timothy Chalamet could pull off the look. But I also think that he's a talented enough actor to where I think if he really went to that kind of some of those dark places, really tapped into some of that intensity, some of the trauma, the depression, just the complexity of Moreau as a character. He's got a lot of positive attributes. He's also got a lot of negative. He's been through a lot, so there's some darkness in him.
Wonderful. Sounds like an amazing book. And
I would be happy if that movie got made.
Yeah, well, you're a filmmaker, so
maybe someday. Fingers crossed. Yeah. I think Smoke in the Cypress wouldn't be a cheap movie to make. I mean, there's a lot of extras. There's a lot. There would be a big sets for New Orleans. There's some battle scenes. There's ships. There's armies at some point. There's different locations, swamps. So it wouldn't be an easy or a cheap production, but I still think it would be. I appreciate the question. I think it would be awesome to see come on screen someday. So that's the dream.
Yeah. So Owen, it's been fantastic having you on the show, and I really want to thank you for taking the time out to talk with us and to give us more of an insight into your story, into your novel. It sounds absolutely fantastic. It sounds fascinating.
It's wherever books are sold online. You can pre-order it, and they're doing an audio book, so there will be a recorded audio book version if people prefer that. It'll be in paperback as well. So Amazon is the one everybody has heard of, but it's out there. If you Google Smoke in the Cypress, you can find it, and pre-order it. But thank you also, Paul, for having me on. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate the thoughtful questions. It was fun to do this.